Welcome to the DVB Newsroom. I am Mumumiat. Joining us today is Dr. Mimi Wimbat, a retired U.S. Army veteran and a distinguished scholar and practitioner specializing in U.S.-Myanmar relations and Southeast Asia affairs. Thanks for joining us today, Dr. Mimi Wimbat.
Thank you for having me. Before we start the interview, I would like to say a little bit of a disclaimer because I'm a little bit of disclaimer. I just want to start with that. My comments and my assessment that I'll be providing today are all of my own. I'm not representing any position of any organization. So I just want to have that clear.
Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Mimi Wimbat. And I've been reading about your news traveling across Europe, and you've been talking to Myanmar community and also international community as well. So I would like to know about motivation behind all your trips and how your trips shape international policy and awareness toward Myanmar issue, Myanmar affairs. Thank you.
Yeah, I have two objectives going to these trips. One is to engage with the Myanmar diaspora, who are very, very important to this revolution. And I just also want to hear how they're seeing the conflict, how they're feeling, what are their issues, and then also, I share my own view with the diaspora on where I think the conflict is at. And then second objective is to shape some of the policymakers and decision makers on their Myanmar policy. So I engage with their Ministry of Foreign Affairs folks, then some of the think tanks that has influence on their policy on Myanmar. So I just have dialogues with them and try to explain to them, where the conflict is based on my research and understanding, assessment.
Thank you. And you may change international policy, especially Western community, and toward the Myanmar issue. But as many of the ASEAN countries hold their kind of ASEAN non-interference policy toward Myanmar, as before, a long time before. So many of the countries tend blind eyes on Myanmar conflict as an internal affair. Is non-interference policy still applicable to Myanmar? How should neighboring countries consider Myanmar affairs nowadays?
Yes. I think that ASEAN need to see Myanmar affair as a regional affairs because yes, it is an internal conflict, but it has the wider regional implications, especially more acute for the neighboring countries. So, for example, all the refugees flows are going into the neighboring countries, and then also there are a lot of transnational security problems that came with this conflict. So it is not just contained within the inside border of Myanmar. It does have a larger regional implications for stemming from this conflict. So they need to really look at it that way rather than just purely internal. In a way, by saying so, it's a little bit of I think misnomer, and also in a way a little bit lazy policy making to say that.
Yeah, it's also another issue. Myanmar-Russia relation is another issue. Some political analysts said the military ties between Russia and Myanmar are getting higher since the coup. Obviously, SAC relies more on Russia than China. And how is SAC relationship with China after the 1027 operations or 1111 operations? There are many, a few operations in 2023 that change policy of neighboring countries like China or Thailand toward Myanmar regime, SAC. And can you please explain about your observation on that operations and the policy of the neighboring countries as well?
Yes. From the when the coup occurred, right, in 2021, most countries thought the military is too big to fail. So military will win again. But what they are starting to realize is that military is on the verge of collapse. And especially after the Operation 1027, there's a real visible win, and visibly the international community is seeing the resistant coalition forces working together, cooperating together, and they knew that that cooperation is key to overcoming the military firepower. So, as the resistance forces gain the territories and then win on the battlefield, I think that's where the international community woke up. And for China specifically, you asked the China question. China was, initially they were supporting the military junta, but they realized that they are a part of the problem when it's come to these scam center, the cyber scam centers that are being facilitated and benefiting from by the military. So they really understood that they can't really rely on the military, and then plus on top of it, military is not able to control the country. And our latest data is showing less than half the country is under the control of military now, and the rest of it all controlled by the coalition forces and EAOs.
Yeah, but at the same time, SAC is trying every possible ways to counterattack the opposition forces. Like they are asking Russia for anti-drone attack to the the opposition forces and ethnic armed groups. Do you think it will, or is there any potential kind of attacks by the SAC against the opposition forces? I mean, more attacks, more drone attacks, or more attacks supported by Russian technology?
Mm-hmm. Well, military has always focused on firepower or equipment or, the machine, war machines, but they don't focus on a strategy at all. And wars are won by strategy rather than by firepower, right? If firepower was a deciding factor, the people, the coalition forces have far less firepower, and they have they have been able to successfully push the military, right? Beat the military up to this point. And so it's all about strategy. And then, and this is also a insurgency, counterinsurgency type of operation. And this type of operation, the primary, actually, we call it center of gravity. The primary element for victory, winning, is people support. When you don't have people support, you cannot win. So I think that's what we're seeing is all that, right? But military will continue to focus on the weaponry and the firepower because that's all they have left. But that is not a winning factor in art of war.
Yeah, I noticed in one interview you mentioned about the changing operation environment in Myanmar conflict today. Can you please explain more about that changing operation environment in Myanmar conflict?
Right. Well, changing as in like change from the previous uprising, like 1988, 2007, and previously, because of the 10 years of opening, 10 years of opening and 10 years of transition to democracy, the Myanmar society forever transformed, forever. And the military did not understand that. In that transformation, also a lot of different thinking, right? The mindset change. And then also their capability and capacity has increased. For example, many of them, all these innovative ideas, use of technology, and technology has gotten cheaper too. So all this stuff, all this element play into the new environment. But meanwhile, the military did not change their strategy from the 1950s. They just cut and paste from the old outdated model of strategy. So that's what we're seeing, is that the changing environment, you got to adapt your strategy to fit the changing environment.
Yeah, and as we noticed that SAC never consider revolutionary forces as threat to their power, but it might change now. How do you think? How is it changing? I mean, they might think the opposition forces become a threat to their power. How do you think?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think the opposition forces has shown them already. We don't. It's since the 1027, but even leading up to Operation 1027, the opposition, the coalition forces has been slowly chipping away at the military capability. So the success of Operation 1027 is not possible if there wasn't almost 3 year preceding that operation, where other groups are also chipping away at military capability and capacity.
I asked the SSC never consider revolutionary forces or ethnic armed group as a threat to their power, but it might change now. What do you think?
Right. Okay. So there are two things, again, back to them not really understanding their own organization, and then also changing environment, and then people in it has changed, right? The Myanmar military is endemically corrupt than it has ever been before, from the top down. That level of corruption eats away at the military capability. Right? And then the second piece is that they think the fear is discipline. So they taught their soldiers and officers to be overly fearful. And you cannot win wars if you have everybody scared of everything. Yes, they have their people are trained to kill, but they're not trained to be professional soldiers. And that's a difference. And they don't understand that. And then like I said earlier, the operating environments change. People in the operating environment, the capacity went up, they're more creative, and also they're committed. And they will not go back to the dictatorship. And that resolve, that commitment, and that commitment came from the military overuse of fear as their main strategy on the population, and it has backfired. So for all these reasons, they're losing their control of the country, and they're losing the over 90% of the people's support. Again, back to what I was saying, if you don't have people's support, you cannot win, or you cannot control the country.
Yeah, as far as we see, SAC has lost control on frontier areas. As you said, they lost more than 50% of the country. And some people have concern of Myanmar becoming Balkanizations. Can you see any prospect that Myanmar will be like the Balkan Peninsula sooner or later?
Mm-hmm. Well, that concern has always been asked of me by the especially international community. And what I would say to that is that all the experience of working together right now, right? We are seeing the unprecedented level of cooperation among all these coalition forces. And this is the first time in Myanmar history that these groups are fighting side by side against a common enemy. In the past, in some cases, some of them are on the opposite side, right? So this level of cooperation, and this cooperation was very difficult. Very difficult. But because nobody came to help them, They knew that they had to do the hard work of cooperating with each other, and they did it. But this habits of dialogue, habits of cooperation will go towards the building of federal democracy in post-conflict environment. Even if there is the worst case scenario and everybody talking about balkanization, well, after balkanization, the peninsula got more stable. So, if balkanization lead to more stability, which is, I think, it's fine with me. I don't think that's any concern. But as well as the current situation, right? The current situation is a lot worse than any balkanization will bring, because Myanmar military is the only group that has enough firepower to create widespread destruction of the country. Right? And they use, and plus on top of that, they have been dividing, they have a strategy of divide and conquer, right? And they're making sure that, there is a misinformation, a misunderstanding between groups. And if you remove that element, then people can work together to try to build it without somebody purposefully trying to create misinformation and distrust between these groups. So I am not as concerned for those reasons that there will be, a problem after the post-conflict. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Yes, I'm not saying it's going to be a cakewalk at post-conflict, but I think I'm a lot more positive than many of the other Western analysts that has been looking at the conflict.
Yeah, also on the other side, there are too much suffering and dying of people. And do you think how long civilians can resist that endless conflict in Myanmar? And also I have, there are many questions coming up, like, can we really get rid of the military institution that have been in Myanmar for 7 or 8 decades? So, is it realistic whether the opposition forces can get rid of military institution?
Well, countries need military institution. There's no doubt about that, but not the way it is right now. It needs to be majorly reformed, because what you have now is not a military institution. I'm sorry to say that. It is a criminal gang. It's an organized militant criminal gang that you have right there. It's not a military. It can't even have a win battle against poorly organized, poorly resourced, poorly trained PDFs. How are they going to be able to defend the country from the foreign invaders who are much more powerful and more organized professional militaries, right? So really what you have is no longer the military, it is a militant organized crime criminal gang group. So yes, Myanmar, a country need a military, but not this one. So there's a lot of security sector reforms and professionalization of military has to occur in post-conflict situation.
Is there any role of Aung San Suu Kyi in that stage? When do you think political dialogue should be started?
Well, there's two different questions. Aung San Suu Kyi, of course, she has the role. She has always been the mother of the country, and people love her. And she has a lot of influence on the population. So, I don't know exactly what role she's going to play, but she is going to continue to play the mother of the country, I think. As for the second question, I forgot.
Political dialogue.
Political
dialogue. When do you think it should be started?
Okay. Political dialogue should be happening right now amongst the coalition forces. coalition forces need to have, in addition to cooperating successfully militarily, they should be starting all the political dialogue. In many ways, many of the, I always say minilateral, like K3Cs and the NUG, they're all talking, but it would be, I think they need to go to the next level of bringing everybody together and start to do the dialogue, like NUCC was trying to do. And then as for the dialogue with the military, until the enforcement mechanism has been figured out, right? Because military will break any agreement. When you start to negotiate any agreement, they will most likely to break it. So when they break it, what is the enforcement mechanism? Until the enforcement mechanism has been thought through or ready to go, then sitting down for dialogue is kind of waste of time at this moment. Until the time military is so weakened that coalition forces can enforce on them by themselves. Unless external force come in and say, okay, we will enforce it for you, then you can dialogue. But until then, it's just a waste of time because we know 100% that military will break the negotiated agreement.
Thank you so much for your time sharing with us, Dr. Mimi Wimbat. And we are very grateful to have you in our newsroom.